start in the second year.
Yeah, right.
So I'll be very brief. I just want to welcome you to the Outhouse Conference on the Couch 2020. This is also PJ and I's house. There's a bathroom over here if anyone needs it. Food and coffee. Feel free to get up and move about and get stuff as you need it throughout the talk today. Anything else we should cover?
Yeah, if in this bedroom right here, if you go through there and make a right, it goes into a hallway to come into the restroom here, in case you don't want to cross in front of everyone. I am audio recording this, just so you know, that we do for archival purposes and also to make this useful for other people.
So we will hear you in the bathroom.
Just so you know.
That's good audio.
And so, as with the past several years, we have our fantastic curator of the Conference of the Couch, Laura Gutierrez.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to see all these amazing, beautiful faces. Thanks everyone for showing up, and most especially for the artists, academics, and otherwise curators and directors, everything else that you do to bring amazing, beautiful queer art to the world, and also for being here, agreeing to be on the couch on day one. Nasty Fruits, Bad Objects. This is the second year, if I remember correctly, yes, that LGBTQ Studies is our official co-sponsor, LGBTQ Studies at UT Austin, which is also where I work. I'm one of the affiliates of this amazing new program that was launched on, well, I won't say anything else because the director is here. Let me just pass on the mic to Lisa Moore, the director of LGBTQ Studies.
I'm thrilled to be here, and I just want to thank Outsider Fest for providing this absolutely juicy and delicious opportunity for us to do a community partnership. Our partnership with Outsider Fest is really our signature community partnership, and we couldn't imagine anything to better express our spirit of queer camaraderie and the signature blend of creative scholarship and rigorous artistry that we really like to curate at LGBTQ Studies. Laura was beginning to talk about the relatively brief history of the program. It was started in 2017 with Ann Svekovich as the first director and Grayson Hunt as the program coordinator. Yeah. And now has evolved, as you know, Ann left to take another job, boo-hoo. But it gave me the opportunity to step into the director's role, which I have absolutely found inspiring and, dare I say, enjoyable, really fruitful, both nasty and delicious, and which has allowed Grayson's role to grow into that of associate director. So it's through partnerships like this one that we're able to keep the town gown superhighway, queer superhighway, populated, going in both directions. I also want to mention another important community program that we run that Grayson hosts every month at Bookwoman, which is the Transgender Feminisms Reading Group. So if you have ideas for things in the community that you would like to involve LGBTQ studies with, please let us know. We are very much involved and appreciative members of the queer community here and the trans community here, and we want to mobilize our resources to enrich it. So again, thanks for the opportunity, and I can't wait to hear from these brilliant artists. Woo!
I also just want to quickly mention that the coffee, the food, everything is largely because of Felice and Sarah.
Yes.
Sitting right now.
Yeah! Drink up!
And there's kombucha in that fridge. You can grab as many as you like.
Take it all. We'll be real mad if we have to throw it away. There you go, Rachel. One of each. One of each. No, one of each.
anybody want?
Mix that with my coffee. Couch will be ruined.
Yeah, so as the kombucha's being sort of passed around,
The opening ceremony.
the opening ceremony. So yes, thank you, Felice and Sarah, and again, and also the volunteers who are here and otherwise. But let's just get started because we're sort of like already running a little bit behind, and I know that we're anxious to hear from this amazing group. And I want to introduce Grayson Hunt, who is now the assistant director of associate director of LGBT studies. Oops. Grayson, please. It's your show now.
Hi, I'm Grayson, they and he pronouns, and I'm so excited to be on the couches with you all. So what I'm going to do is just do a kind of brief intro to each of these folks, but as I do it, I'm going to ask them to add one thing that they think should also be mentioned. So I'll do like the kind of non-juicy intro, and then you bring the juice. Okay. And I'm gonna go out of order. So we have Rotimi Agbabiaka right here, and they are an actor, singer, director, writer, and teaching artist. They studied English, economics, and Plan 2 at UT Austin. I knew that would get something. Earned an MFA in acting from Northern Illinois University. So what juice would you add to that?
Well, I promptly fled the Midwest for California, where I live now, and where I met Edris Cooper, who's my director. That's some juice. Some other juices, I went to school here in Austin. I love this town. It's always great to come back. I was here a few years ago at Outsider Fest with my last solo show, Typecast, and so it's really great to be back, and I'm excited, to get nice and juicy and nasty all weekend.
Well, welcome. And then next we have Edris Cooper-Anifowoshe, who told me she was not part of the talent, even though I knew from the way she entered the room that she was.
I didn't know.
She is an award-winning director, actor, and writer. She's directed at Trinity Rep, Magic Theater, Theater Works, and Water Tower Theater Dallas, the Mark Taper Forum, Southern Rep in New Orleans, and Alabama Shakespeare, among others. Give us the juice, Idris.
Spill the tea.
Yes.
Well, your juice is.
Oh, okay, I can do my juice. Oh, God.
Is that you're the best costume actor in San Francisco. He gets
This
all
is
the
the new
good
title
shit.
that Edris has awarded me.
I make soap. By hand.
It's great soap. All I use. I'm the best costume and the best lathered actor in San Francisco.
He's clean.
I'm so good. It takes a lot too to get me clean. So. Thanks, Edris.
Thank you and welcome, Idris.
Thank you.
Next, right beside me here, we have Top Shelf, and she is part of Hot Bits. She's a co-curator with Hot Bits, which is a queer porn touring film festival. Top Shelf is from Baltimore, and she also does some incredible work dismantling white supremacy with and for white folks. So doing the labor that needs to get done. And what juiciness will you add?
I feel like the first thing that came to mind with juiciness is squirting, and I feel like I've gotten to become much more of a squirter over the past few years.
Dangling you. Top Shelf also does drag and dancing at a lesbian strip club. So lots of juiciness. We're glad you're here. Next up is Susana Vargas. And Susana writes, researches, and teaches. Susana is responsible for the artwork that we're going to hear more about. Not that she created it, but she's curated it for us and has a story to tell about it. But Susana also just got an incredible job at Carleton University, which is where Anne Spekovich is. So we're so glad that you're here, and I'm really happy for you. And you research the connections between gender, sexuality, class, and skin tonalities to reconceptualize pigmentocracy. Pigmentocracy. Yeah. This is learning for me right now. So what kind of juice do you want to add?
I mean, it's very hard to follow.
I didn't know.
That was real.
That was, yeah.
Fair enough. We're glad you're here. And finally, we have Paul Soileau, who is, you know who Paul is, performance artist best known for alter egos CHRISTEENE, who is a sexually infused sewer of live rap and vile shamelessness, and cabaret crooning Rebecca Havemeyer, and ageless bastard Harris of the boozy bygone Hollywood years. I did not write that, but I like reading that. And it's a thrill and a true pleasure to have you back in Austin following your departure to New York. So tell us something juicy.
I am currently, as of the last 5 minutes, working on a new character named Pigmento Christie.
Already, this is working.
And it's good to be back. Pigmento Christie who scored.
A tutorial.
A 5-year project.
So yes, welcome you juicy fruits. We're thinking about bad apples, and what bad apples sometimes make other apples go bad. And so I want to think about like what kind of work you do that you find best corrupts people in your community and your peers. Like, what have you been responsible for? What non-normative acts are you responsible for getting other people, involved in? Whether it's like getting your grandma to come to a CHRISTEENE show, or getting your students, future students, to think about pigmentocracy, or like empowering people to learn how to squirt. Right. So like, what do you do to corrupt your community?
Well, I've been thrown out of every university I've ever taught at.
You're doing something
Yeah, some would say tarred and feathered, actually. But usually I think it's around the work. It's I don't know. That's the best I can do when I get there. Once you get there, like, it's your duty, I think, to get thrown out. If you're not rubbing up against getting thrown out, I would suggest you try harder. Yeah, they're not places where I feel people should conform. And it's rough, because I know there are academics in the room. So it's rough out there to like stand in your truth, or even to like find some new truth. But that's one of the places I think where resistance is really fruitful. Yeah, I like to convince students to quit. Especially if I'm being fired. So I had the pleasure of bringing some students from Colorado. I was thrown out of Naropa University. I'll tell you about it, but I'm under a gag order. Like, it got deep like that. So, but I talk about it, I do shows about it under a gag order. So that's necessary too. So like, we left and we brought students to San Francisco with us. And the same was true of, I was at Indiana University and I got thrown out of there. So that's, that's my work.
Yeah.
That's my work.
I think, like following that too is like I like infiltration of space. The work being done when it gets strange, when it's granted access to a realm such as a university. I really try to infiltrate spaces outside of not only like my own backyard, like we as a family of outsiders. I find it really great to inspire within those spaces, but to bring our work to places where it don't belong, I find that the most potent reaction is when we are in those rooms where we're not supposed to be, and this idea of like fruit rotting other fruit. I mean, you stay until they kick you out, and you make as much of a ruckus in there until they get wise or ignorant. And that's I think an exciting way for we as outsiders to spread our message. Our own backyard knows what's going on. Sometimes, not all the time really. You do need to do your own backyard, but there's great joy in finding a crack in the door or the wall or the roof or the floor to climb through and get into those rooms and then do as much as you can, as fast as you can, as loud as you can, until they call the cops.
I think one thing that we've had a lot of questions about, and the show that we're going to do questions a lot, is sort of how does one deal with the fact that a lot of that sometimes when you get into a space that you weren't allowed to before, sometimes what the outsider perspective you bring can so easily be, or sometimes be co-opted by the dominant structure and used to reinforce that structure by giving it some sort of legitimacy, giving it a queer face or a black face or a female face, and suddenly, we're more okay with things that we used to protest or things that we used to oppose, and how does an artist, who's finds themselves sort of on the cusp of that kind of decision or in the middle of such a space, how do they maintain that their bad appleness, and how do they infect others with their deviance in a way that actually undermines this dominant structure, right? The what good and bad has been, and that's something we're still figuring out. I guess one approach that we've found useful is to never get comfortable with the answers that you've previously come up with, or the answers that are even conventionally accepted, either in the dominant narratives, but also sometimes within your own community, thinking about just sort of notions of success, like what is success, or what is it to make it, and where do you try to make it, and how can we keep questioning that, whether it's the idea that we need more diversity is the answer, but diversity to what end or in what spaces, and in what ways, you know, are those goals and those answers really challenging the structure. So I think, you know, that constant examination, constant dissatisfaction with the status quo is necessary or helpful to keep working out, how to be an infecting force and not a force for cooptation.
With the Hotbits curation of the queer porn, some of the feedback that we've gotten from folks by doing this festival now in the 4th year is that the entries have been inspired. People are making erotica based on having attended the festival and seeing bodies such as themselves represented, sexuality such as theirs, and so that's been really inspiring to kind of like see that rubbing of bad fruit and spreading. And then also we've had feedback from people watching the film saying like, well, I've never thought to do that in the bedroom or in the street or wherever, or in a dumpster. So that's been exciting too, to open up ideas of where you can find pleasure and what's beautiful and what's erotic, and so I think that that's been an inspiring part of the journey too.
Susana, how are you going to do it? You're moving into this academic space.
Well, this, you know, like this is actually academic, and that was how maybe it's like taking out of the academic or always occupying a liminal space. These photographs actually came from a true crime magazine. So that magazine was really hard to watch because all the photographs are really gruesome, but really gruesome, like mutilated body parts, a burned body part. I think that the censorship in the States since the 60s, you might not even can recall one of those photos to mind, but in Mexico City are very common, and they are always sort of in a line at every newsstand. This particular magazine, it's called Alarma, and it set the tone for the rest of the chronicle of violence in Mexico that is called sort of Red News. And I found this magazine from the 60s and at a flea market. And then I saw one of these photographs and I was like, how could that be? Because Mexico is the second country in the world after Brazil with most hate crimes and trans crimes. And all what I've read is that alternative sexualities or peripheral sexualities are always killed because of their sexuality. So how is this photo existing? And then I saw another one, and then I looked at all 2,000 of them, and there were 286 stories with peripheral sexualities. The treatment of men dressed in women's clothing and women dressed in men's clothing was very different. So I only include the ones of men dressed in women's clothing. That in this particular magazine was called Mujercitos. And after looking at all of them, I was surprised that there were only 20 photographs that could be part of that tradition. So that was like a whole new Red News that was opening and that we really didn't know about, because all what was written with no photographs is that they were being killed, and it was true that they were being killed. So these photographs are from 1963 to 1986, and not in an academic fashion. A book was published with only the archival material, and that created, and that is what circulated. So that created a new way of framing and understanding and appropriating peripheral sexualities in Mexico with a total different name that was Mujercitos. So what I've heard from the older generations that were part of this is like, oh, I thought that all the photographs were mutilated body parts. Like, I didn't know these photographs, and it's like shock therapy, and I feel so happy that these photos like exist. And then many new generations see these photographs and feel relatable, and sort of they have a party now with this name. People call themselves this name, Mujercitos, and it's been out of academia, too, which to me was great because I needed the resources and everything to be able to do all this research, but then all the emotional support that came from my community, because to extract these photographs I had to look at so many other ones of like really gruesome. And before I used to show them, and now I feel like I don't need to, but it's always important to contextualize that they came from a very particular chronicle of violence, and the violence that is exercised here is different, but you can stomach it and you can, process it differently.
Thank you, all of you. And the way this is gonna go is like, I'll ask a couple more questions, and then we're just really gonna open it up to a convo with the audience. Because part of what we're doing with this is we're corrupting the conference setting, which would really be just us talking at you for the hour, 2 hours. So I wanna follow up with a quick one-word answer, playful question. Playful for me, I don't know how you'll feel about it. and then ask another question. And then we'll open it up for y'all to ask your juicy questions. So some fruit smells when it's rotten, and some fruit smells when it's ripe. So are you rotten or ripe?
Yeah.
I'm both.
Both?
Oh.
You're a fruit that's ripe when it's rotten? Or that's rotten when it's ripe?
So I think they can coexist at that limit.
Well, you've broken the rules.
Isn't that what bad do?
In some ways
Yes.
I feel rotten, and in some ways I feel ripe. Makes sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of with her. Like,
Yeah.
I feel, well, it's different. I feel to most people, the work primarily, Christine, that I do is rotten on the outside and ripe on the inside. I feel ripe on the outside and rotten on the inside. In a good way, rotten when I do it. So it's really people's perception of what beauty is, what sexuality is. I'm always infecting and putting disease through the channels of my family. And my parents are a great example of like how they perceive it. And when they saw Christine for the first time last year at a show, and I really took pains to have a conversation with them about what I wanted them to know that I was okay. I've always said they've known about the work, they just never seen it. And I always said, you'll never understand why I do it, but you need to understand that I'm okay. And they actually left the show from September to December thinking that I was very angry, that I was just full of rage, that I was going through some difficulties. They were very pleased with the scope of the show and the people who attended, and it was a really nice show in London. But I didn't realize that they left with that feeling, and when I went home for Christmas, I spoke with them, and I had to kind of go back and tell them, no, this is a beautiful experience for me, a very spiritual experience for me, which made my mom very happy because she still does church and all that shit. And so, to them, the outside was very different than the inside of what I feel, and I think Rotten and Ripe is kind of hand in hand with a lot of the things being done. And it takes some explaining if people care to hear.
But then there's because I'm so young. I think there's also the unripe.
Oh.
Just before budding. I'm there.
Yes. along those lines, I feel like, I work primarily as an actor. And I think one of the things about being an actor is or one of the things about working professionally is there's this onus on you to be somebody people want to work with again. or from the very beginning, when you walk into the audition, you have to smile and you have to be, personable. And I think
others want to play with you.
Yeah. Which, and in some ways, I don't know if I'm still a young artist, but I'm someone who's still in the beginning of my professional career, and I think there's a lot of that pressure to appear ripe, or appear on the verge of ripeness, but a sort of ripeness that is, pleasing and pleasant. And I'd like to think that there's rottenness inside of me that is underneath all of that.
I affirm that.
Yes, and that the full bloom of me will be much more rotten than rotten. So yeah, and I guess part of the journey is letting that rottenness come out. And not resisting the pressure to maintain a pleasing ripeness.
Yeah, I think having people need to understand the need for decay. We just are so from everything that has to do with death and decay is so taboo and misunderstood in a way that the embracing of all of that's dying and that's rotten and is so necessary and has such a beauty inside of it that the juxtaposition of the two is really beautiful. Thank you.
I was gonna say normalize BV, bacterial vaginosis. The idea that you are rotten or stinky or fit. This is like a goal of a certain group of queers for 2020, is we are going to be spreading normalized BV. And just how that inhibits the sense of wanting to be intimate with others and wanting to share your body. Does it smell bad? Is it is your butt clean enough? Is there any toilet paper stuck? Is there all these things? So and that especially for folks with this fear that it's not right, whether it's too much secretion, too little. The ebbs and flows of your cycle and how you smell and taste, and so normalize BV.
How is the volume at the back of the room?
Good.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to. I've been thinking a lot about disability justice, and one of the tenets of disability justice is sustainability. How do we nourish ourselves to keep doing this kind of work? I think for each of you in your own specific ways, the work you do is taxing. Working with white folks to dismantle white supremacy, I imagine is taxing. What CHRISTEENE you do at your show, it probably isn't taxing in the way that your parents think, but it's also,
Looks hard.
it looks hard.
It's great.
So, I guess I want to know, how do you all spoil yourselves, in the way of self-love? What do you do that's decadent, right? Decadence too is the decay, but also it's decadent. So how do you spoil yourselves? What do you do to keep being able to do this work?
Literal self-love.
Yeah, so what is literal? You're talking about what I think you're talking about?
Yeah,
okay.
That's very helpful.
I like to drink a lot. Had 3 cocktails last night. Yeah, I consume a lot. Like, I like really good food with butter and like, you know, I guess that sustains me. Well, I don't want to give away, but there's a line from the show that says, it's a total risk and it doesn't matter what happens to you. You're being used. And I think that's not for everybody. But I think that that's as the kind of performer I want to be, or I think I am, is that, like, it doesn't really matter what happens to me. And I've worked with performers who have, I worked with the great Wayne Corbett, who's a queer poet in San Francisco, who wrote the first play about AIDS by someone with AIDS, like living with AIDS, that was done at Theater Rhinoceros. And Wayne used to do a show where he would perform until he couldn't anymore, till he collapsed onto the floor. And the producer would step out and say, oh, thank you for coming, that's all Mr. Corbett has for us tonight. And I wanted to step into those shoes. I thought that is what performing, that's what being a total performer is about. And so, to maybe my detriment, I don't practice a lot of, you know, good spoil. Yeah. I'm like liquor and butter and more work.
I would say, like, personally, probably community and then therapy are the ways I spoil myself and try to take care. And then to kind of go with the, how do we maybe, like, extend beyond ourselves, like, to spoil our audience. And understanding more accessibility justice has been a learning path for us. So having content warnings prior to the film showing, sexuality comes with so much baggage. It's really important to center survivor-based experiences when asking people to get really intimate with us. We also have it written in the program, so you can, like, read through it beforehand and decide to step out before a certain film plays. We've also provided, like, a chill-out space, so if you just need to go and put in over, like, some headphones to be able to not hear, see what's going on, or have someone to talk to who's more of a peer, not a trained social worker per se. And then also, like, having ASL interpretation and closed captioning for the films, and having being able to put things into the event program, so making sure people know, are there 2 steps up to this, is it a ramp, having the bathrooms be all gender inclusive, learning about how, writing down, like, do the chairs have armrests or not, so that depending on the size of your body, is it going to be a comfortable space for you to go into to sit down, reserving seating up front for folks with mobility issues, those sort of ways that, and then, like, also, like, spoiling the senses, and so, like, having, you know, barely naked bodies to, like, eat little bites of fruit and, you know, sushi and things off of during intermission, because you need to, like, feed yourself to keep going. And having the, like, community space afterwards. Having alcohol and lubricant available. Yeah.
I have not found a way to replenish. I don't think I will. I have drank myself to replenishment. I have bathed in butter. I have destroyed my friend's ears with my woes. I have made my hours of sleep and being awake irregular. I've moved. The only thing that ever works is to keep getting on stage, which isn't really the healthiest thing either, because you always have to go home. I go home to a cat. I'm single. That's also, yes, a cat. That doesn't offer much conversation and replenishment because I have to scoop his shit and feed him. So it's a really, for me, very emotional, tricky road to navigate, and it gets really heavy. Sometimes it's fantastic. I don't think there is an answer of how to refill your tank for everyone. I think we all have the things that our thresholds can handle. And I like to think that most artists know when their red light goes off to lay down on the stage and stop, or to do what they need to do to survive. I think we lose a lot of artists because their red lights are really hidden and they don't survive what they're creating. I think the one thing in sustainability for self and for helping others is stepping out of your ego and the bubble that you live in, which you must cater to survive as an artist. That is a part of being an artist. But there is a really powerful exchange that happens when you, even if you're on empty, to give a little to someone else and exchange with someone to get out of selflessness, just however much you can afford, actually replenishes you at the same time. So when you start to learn how to dance with that exchange with other people, like what you're saying, and all the steps you're taking to make others feel comfortable and powerful is actually replenishing you as well, because you're getting a result from that. Not having this idea that only you can replenish yourself or only you have this answer to keep it going. It's really mysterious how we continue to do what we all do. And I think you just have to it helps to have patience, a lot of patience, and to find some sort of conversation with some sort of power or strength out there unknown to anyone on earth that can hopefully kind of hold your hand when you need it, or point you in the right direction to something or someone that can give you some insight into how to do it the next day. But the best drug is getting into the realm of where you do what you do, be it the stage or anywhere, whatever you're doing. I find the best is when you're doing it, and just understand when the red lights go off when you're not doing it. Listening to your gut.
I think what Paul says made me think about something that that I find replenishing or that I find helpful is communing with people who've done it before, either people who are still around or people who you can read what they wrote or watch what they did, people who've gone through the same or similar journey, creative journey, and who are similar in mission too, or in similar bad apples, for example. Like who are your bad apple forebears, or who are the bad apples that infected you, or can keep infecting you, keep that that is very think of people who reach out for, hold out to, is that's something that I think when I read what James Baldwin wrote, or when I read or hear like Simone talk about shaking people up, that's a way of, for me, I think, of gaining more fuel to keep doing what I do.
That's a big thing. Like when you find someone who's now gone, and you see a connection with whatever it is you're doing, and one, like if you're from a small town or a place where like those artists or even that conversation never even made it to your life, I've found like the work being done I'm 43, like I'm just now discovering artists who a lot of people, academics, know all about, and I don't know shit about, and I'm always very eager and the first person to say, I don't know who that is. I have zero idea what you're talking about, and show me, teach me about that. Like the ones who have come before and have done probably way more. That's a really exciting way to refill yourself privately, on your own, without the help or assistance or pulling from anyone else's tank. And then that you're also understanding where the hell you came from and what you're bringing to the table.
Susana, I'm thinking about you because of the kind of images you have had to look at and that you maybe don't show people anymore, but like, how do you sustain yourself with that kind of engagement?
Well, I am really high maintenance. I go to therapy, I try to meditate, I try to eat very well, and I also try to exercise, and I do a lot of grounding activities. That's just to exist. But when I did this research, and it was very hard, I went to a witch, actually, and she helped me. Well, in Mexico it's not as exotic. It's like not, like you do that. And so she helped me do a ritual, and we did a ritual with all the photographs that I was working on because, for example, Lorena, it doesn't specify, but most of them were sex workers. And with Lorena, she was 17, and the article said that she was looking for love on the highways. So when I try to look for anyone that appeared in the photographs, most likely from 86 onward, there were no more photographs. And that's because the HIV crisis in Mexico that continues to be very stigmatized. So most likely their lives ended very abruptly and short and violent too. So she helped me do a lot of rituals to respectfully write about them and write in a way that people will understand, and that it will dignify their life, and that it will be taken with love. And every time I sat down to write, I did a ritual, and it really helped, because after that I felt like a weight, and then it really the writing really flow after that, and I finished my whole dissertation. and it was really nice, because when I started doing book tours that were not academic at all, because there were academic articles that appear that no one reads, and they're there. But this book, there was a party, and then this mom came and talked to me after, and she said, I was very scared because my son is trans and he's 20, and now I came to this party and everyone was so happy that it lifted off a weight off my shoulder. And then Al Jazeera asked me to do an interview, and I invited her and older trans women that had been around during this time. And then the mom was talking a lot with Rochelle, the trans woman, and she was like, well, I'm very scared for my kid. And then Rochelle said, well, what are you scared about? And she said, well, he's not gonna find a job. And then she said, well, we're in Mexico. They're not gonna find a job. It doesn't matter, they're trans. And then she just said it in such a light way, and it was so nice. And then the mom opened a group for trans mom, but she said with love, that was the title of the Facebook group. So it felt like the witch really helped me. And it really was, it was only being loving for so many people, how it circulated. And after this, I worked on another project that it was even heavier, because it's a female wrestler, serial killer of elderly women. Wow. And then I went and visited her in prison, and I talked to her for 2 hours, and that took a lot of sessions. But I did also finish the book, and she likes what I wrote, and she is open, and she contrary to all the stereotyping of serial killers that do it out of notoriety or fame, she never gives interviews. She actually considers that, and it's true, she didn't give an interview to me, she just talked. But she really directed the backbone of the new book. trying to go back to visit her, but it took me like 2 years to recover from the first one. But I like that we do have rapport, and that makes the writing more accessible, and that it is received very differently. Thank you.
Let's open it up and see what the audience is thinking and what y'all want to ask and know.
Don't y'all hate this moment?
Get me out. I want to know the name of that book.
Yeah, Susanna.
The new one?
Yeah.
Well, it's a very academic type. The Little Old Ladies, Serial Killers, the sensationalized crimes of Mexico's first female serial killer.
Oh, who was a wrestler?
I just want to know
Under
why
the
she did it.
disguise
I
name.
want to like go back to the why part. Like, why did she do it?
I mean, I'm always asked that question, and I never ask her, and I don't think there's one satisfying answer, and I can give like 20 answers, but I don't think that there will be one answer that is satisfying.
I also approve of shrinks and psychotherapy.
And witches.
And witches.
Yeah.
All of those things.
I don't tell my psychoanalyst that I go see a witch.
They'll charge you more. Cheating on them.
I actually wanted to ask, what were the things you were teaching? The major that you were
I
working
taught
on?
acting.
And they kicked you out. I love that.
Well, yeah, what
I
was
was supposed to say, you were accused of browning your students. Can we talk about that?
Oh,
Can we
yeah.
talk about that?
What does that mean?
So in Europa, they threw our whole program out, and they said we were browning students. Well, another faculty member said this directly to me, and I said, "What was browning?" And he said, "Well, they walk into your classroom, they're white. When they walk out of your classroom, they're like Colombian and Italian, and so it was they had trouble because see what I don't know. It's crazy. People are crazy. We had Eddie Lanzalato, who's a New York performance artist, came and did ancestral rituals with students. Like, this is what only thing I can figure out. But I think there's a way in which when I teach acting and when I think of acting, I think of I wrote a paper once on the democratic principles of acting. That I think there's a way that it can be restructured so that you don't, like, I hate the system that we have where there's a lead actor in the play. And so I would not cast my play. So I did, we did the work of Robert O'Hara, Booty Candy, that was your Juicy.
Yeah.
We did Booty Candy. And a play called An American Mall, which I was supposed to cast with 15 actors, and then I chose 30. And a lot of actors who weren't, were graduating seniors, had never been cast in a play, or who weren't considered viable for the stage. They will never have a career. Why are you indulging them? It was just, a large part of the cast was queer, and the play deals with slavery, so we all learned all the parts, and I sent students off. Like, there's a lot of sex throughout. It just says, Juliet and, what's the guy, Weston are fucking. That's the stage direction. Juliet and Weston are fucking. And so you stage that, and you say, okay, 4 of you go off in groups of 2, and let's see what this is. Let's explore, how we're going to be fucking on stage. And so then the whole group chooses which of the 4 fucking scenes that the cast has created that we like. So the cast is choosing the portrayals. It's not an actor going off and learning the character on his own. The cast is choosing how Thomas Jefferson is going to be played in this scene. And so when you give students autonomy, sometimes they go places where the administration feels it's inappropriate. And so there was a couple incidences maybe where we were invited to do. Can I share the story? We were invited to do art for social change. You guys, the motherfuckers need to be careful what they ask for. Art for social change. So it's like we want your cast to come to, and we were early in the rehearsal process, so we hadn't rehearsed any scenes, and they wanted us to present a scene. So it's like so this is how we rehearse. There's a scene where Thomas Jefferson and the forefathers are writing the Constitution while slaves pick cotton underneath them, right? So how do we stage this scene? And so I said, let's show them our process. So we'll have 4 different ways of doing the scene and portraying the forefathers, and then the audience will choose which one, and we'll put that one in the play, like whichever one they choose. And so they chose all these different portrayals, and one of which they were frat boys. At one point, it was like, hey, fucking, we the people. And so, more beer. But then there was the queer sex one where they were all, coming as they were writing. And at the end, Thomas Jefferson butt fucks John Adams. And then the theater department sitting, the chair of the department is sitting next to Marlon Bailey, who's I don't know if you know Marlon Bailey. He's a career academic. So Marlon is like, yes, yes, oh yes, and the chair department, this is a true story, chair department is like headed toward me going, oh, he's appalled by Marlon. It's like, wow, just stop this. And he's coming down. And there's a professor from the history department who's like 140 years old. He's like Professor Emeritus. And he's making his way and he goes, young lady, I have never seen anything like this. This is wonderful. This thing the truest betrayal of our forefathers. And the chair was like, that's kind of when they started getting rid of me. They were like, every semester someone came out in my acting class. That's how you teach acting. You find your fucking self in the class, yes. But they don't like that. Sorry. Oh my God.
So I guess my next question is. First of all, is that how y'all met? Like, were you in one of her classes, or?
No.
Let's see. Do you want to tell her? Should I?
Well, I wrote to you, right?
Yeah, you wrote to me. Yeah. I just moved to San Francisco and I was performing with the San Francisco Mime Troupe. If you know that company, but it's a political theater company.
They're the oldest political theater company in the U.S. And then I had been part of the Mime Troupe years earlier with a mentor. Like, I was the bad apple. And I saw there was a new bad apple. And I was like who? So my husband's Nigerian, and So it's Rotimi. And I said, honey, there's a queer Nigerian in the mime troupe. He went, what? Oh my God. And so I wrote to him, and I was like, I have to know you. And then he came to my solo show and laughed his ass off, and I was like, like-minded.
Yeah.
Like he laughed at all the shit nobody dared.
And then when I was doing a solo show a few years ago, I was like, okay, I want us to work on this together. And ever since then, what is that, like 4 years ago now? 5 years ago?
Yeah.
5 years? Something like that. Been partners in crime.
Yes.
Ever since. So, yeah.
I still gotta take this class.
I'm not allowed, we have an alley behind Bravo. We're not allowed in classrooms anymore.
The world's a stage, right?
But my chair at Naropa used to say what you were saying too. She used to grab the students and say, we don't have much time.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, listen, pay attention. I don't have much time. They're going to throw us out of here.
Yeah. And then that's what kind of determines like what you choose to throw out of them. Like that's why I pull balloons out of my ass the beginning of the show. And, you know, like deal with it. And it's I always believe too, like if people leave, like if people are like, fuck this, and they walk out, like the head of that department giving you that shit, I find great joy when people leave because they have to go home. They're not going to forget what they saw, ever. And they have to wake up the next day and they have to question themselves, why did I leave? Like, that is a much stronger punch than the people who stay. I am always happy to see people get upset, to storm out, to try to shut you down, because I usually, I don't know how y'all feel, but like for me, if that happens to me, I think about it a lot and then I let it go. They don't let that shit go. I like to imagine that will stay with them. That image will stay with them. Why they felt that is going to haunt them, and it's going to boil up someday. The way everything boils up. So I find that that's a very important and satisfying confrontation, and that small window of time is truly very important to kind of throw out everything you've got, but in a calculated way. You have to be responsible for what you're throwing out as well. I always say, like, listen to your gut, and do what it tells you, as long as you're not hurting anyone and hurting yourself. And you have to be aware that when you do pull things out of your ass and have the first fathers jizz on the Constitution and shit, like you're using your platform, you're making a decision, and you're harnessing a power that you've been given, and you're responsible for that. So recklessness is fantastic, but you have to be aware of, you have to have your hands on it while you're doing it, or I try to, in a way. But it's also fun when you lose yourself too. You just call a lot of people and apologize the next day. If you have to.
Those betrayals came out of their research. Like there was research. Like, have you ever read Benjamin Franklin has 20 reasons why you should fuck older women as opposed to younger women. Oh, it's a great little essay. The last one is it's a real early piece of misogyny that we should all have our hands on. Like, it should be part of the. It's been probably stripped from the National Archives. But there you can get a copy at the Smithsonian, I think, or the Library of Congress. One of those. We got a copy of it, and I went to that Benjamin Franklin Museum in London, and asked them if they had it on display, and they were like, "We know about it." Like, they knew about it, but it is not on display. But it's like 20 reasons why you should fuck older women.
Wow.
And one of them is like, if you pull up the skirt, all pussy looks the same. Like, it's just shit like that. Like, So the portrayals were not just like, oh, let's shock the audience.
Right.
It was really an attempt to really strip the forefathers of this kind of glory. We read the People's History of the United States. We got your corporation. Like we weren't just willy nilly, as my mom would say. I want to say something about rejuvenation. One of the reasons I think I continue to tolerate California is because it has an ocean. And like the rituals at the ocean are very helpful. And anytime I think you can be alone in nature and listen to a leaf. I find that the most effective way of restoration.
Just to add to that note, on a scientific tip, the ions in the air when the salt water crashes, it's already been studied and proven that ions make you feel better. Salt lamps. That's what they have Himalayan salt with the light inside of it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to heat up the salt and put ions in the air. It's supposed to make you feel better, make the plants grow and stuff. But it's like a smidget compared to what the ionosphere is like around nature. And the highest ions in the air is when the ocean crashes. So the salt hits the air and it becomes ionized, and it makes people breathe better. It elevates your mood. It pushes serotonin to the brain, which is what weed does. And you're like, I feel so happy. So the ocean's real deal.
Oh, wow.
Like it'll definitely bring peace to you on a legit level.
Thank you.
I have a question. So there's been a lot of discussion of this idea of like rotten fruit, bad apples, rotting the rest of the, around you. I'm curious about the role, or maybe thinking about the good apple, right? And do you think about you were once a good apple and that has made you want to be a rotten apple? Do you think about within your practice people who consider themselves good apples, and does that fuel your practice to be the counter to that? I'm just kind of curious about thinking of that idea of like the good apple, right?
Well, I grew up in a very evangelical household, and I was a really good apple as a kid. I would tell my friends about Jesus. I was out there trying to spread the gospel. And so now I spread a different gospel. I'm very, very committed to spreading a different gospel, partly to repair some of the damage I did. Make amends. But that definitely fuels my commitment, to being a bad apple. And to answer the second question, I think a lot of the work we do, and this piece in particular, speaks to good apples in terms of the good artist, good artist in the sense of the person who's doing what it takes to succeed or to get ahead within this paradigm of show business, specifically, or entertainment. And we're interrogating that. We have a character who's sort of on the cusp of something where they could be a success or be something else. And so we're really, I guess, questioning what is it to be a good apple? What is good? What is worth pursuing? What is worth applying your efforts towards? What is the gospel that you want to spread, or maybe should spread, or so that definitely fuels, you got to spread some sort of gospel, but hopefully it's a bad one.
I was a good apple because of Jesus. I was in Catholic school, so we wore uniforms, and I had to be a good apple. I chose to be a good apple to survive as a little gay kid in a small town. So I kind of made allies with all the groups. So if one group came after me, the other group would protect me. It got me through. It was really phony. I always admired the fuckers who started fucking spiking their hair and painting their faces with Sharpies and saying fuck you to the system at young ages. I just am in awe of those people, and many of my friends are those people. So it was just a process of peeling away all of those survival techniques. I am so fearful today of walking on the streets the way I want to walk, the way I want to look. I've tons of fear still to do that, and I think I am still reclaiming years of wearing a uniform from elementary school, high school, Jesuit college. My identity was taken from me. Can't imagine that. So I think my job and the work I do is reclaiming a lot of that. In terms of good apples, I don't give a fuck about people who are good apples within like work that we do, like good apple to get ahead, good apple to show off. Like, I just don't even acknowledge good apples. I don't even see them. I think, to me, good apples like are genuine good apples who are people who dedicate their lives to social justice, to taking down the patriarchy that we're dealing with right now. People who don't have time to decorate themselves, who don't have time to do shit because they're dedicating all of their time to helping other people. Like, that to me is a genuine good apple. And I like to think of that as a good fruit and an apple. I don't think of them as having nasty insides, which they do. I hopefully I can give them that release when they go out and need to find a tank to fill, and they can come to a show and let whatever out. I would rather help a good apple be bad for a night. That is important to me. But like good apples, like, you know, Rotimi was talking about, like, fuck them. Who's got time for them? Like, they're gonna go rotten. Like you said, they're gonna decay and they're gonna go rotten eventually. We all will. So my pleasure will come in watching them rot. That's not very nice, but it's true. And then I'll be there to pick them up and say, "You're beautiful. Look at us, we're rotten." Or tell them they need better foundation when they're trying to cover it up.
Top Shelf, what is that? What does the good apple, bad apple look like in from your point of view or from your place?
I feel like both, I was a good apple as far as like growing up, but then I got corrupted by like a really special bad apple, who I'd like to just say her name, Rachel Carey Cardoza, who is like my best friend and the first woman lover I ever had, and she's since passed away. But like she taught me how to skip school and steal nail polish at the mall. And how to like, you know, hide ourselves having sleepovers in my bedroom. So
how do you steal nail polish at the mall?
I mean, you just take it. And I guess since then, I feel like understanding more about the world and injustice and wanting to be a voice of resistance and seeing the importance of like standing up and really appreciating civil disobedience as a way to do that, which is often seen as like bad because you're getting arrested or doing something illegal, and wanting to kind of disrupt that notion of what is good and what is bad, and going with like your moral imperative rather than the law of the land, and just like the ways that kind of like bringing civil disobedience trainings to white community in Baltimore to be supportive of like Black Lives Matter movement, especially during like the uprising after Freddie Gray's murder, was a really, I feel like a way to kind of intersect with this like bad apple idea, because there was all these people out there being like, oh, there's just a few bad apples in the police department. And it's like, they're not just a few bad apples, it's the whole system is guilty and is rotten, and what are we going to do to dispose of it and transform it, and whether it's like, you know, letting it rot or making it compost so that we can have restorative justice practices so we can move towards a different society and world that we want.
Susana, what about you?
Well, that I don't think there's one good apple and one rotten apple, but that it always fluctuates and it's like in relation to what. Like I was a good apple, but then I wasn't also growing up. Because inside I wanted different things. So I was, I think it's a position that always changes and that is relational.
What else do you want to know?
I had a question. Susanna? Okay, so you were talking about like some of the restorative practices you were doing as far as ritual, and I was wondering, you don't really have to give any like specifics or details necessarily, but I was wondering like as far as the rituals that you did, what were some of the aspects of them that you connected to the most?
I think that I do trust the person that I was doing it with, and that I think that I had faith on the ritual. Maybe that's the important thing. And I believe that's the same to be which a therapist or a doctor. I feel like if you don't trust it and you don't have faith, it might not work. That would be my main thing. That's why I think it worked. Like I really believed in it, and I really trusted.
You look quiet.
Alright, then I have another question. So I wanted to ask you, as far as your work, when would you say it started to become the most controversial, or like, did it start out that way, or did you kind of like go into being more?
It started out controversial. It was very small, and it was just me just personally kind of creating a character that was satisfying some needs that I had within myself. They were happened to be very sexual, happened to be breaking away from like more traditional forms of persona or drag, of makeup and jewelry and wigs, and I wanted to kind of fuck that shit up. So it started out as just a personal kind of action that Austin, Texas is a place where you can really explore things and throw it into the laboratory, get a lot of good support. A lot of people in this room were there on the first days of it, you know? And mixed reactions. There was town halls called from shit that I was doing. There was, you name it, you know? It disrupted a lot of things, and it made me have to defend and understand what I was doing. Then PJ and I make music videos together. That put it out there, and I have always pulled balloons out of my ass since day one. The character's never really changed in appearance to fit a need of people in the audience. It's been like 10 years since we've been doing this. Somewhere in the middle, something happened, and it became a platform of political activism, you know, sexual, I don't know, discovery of identity or fluidity or rebelliousness against constructs that we have been put upon by our parents and our society. People started talking to me about what the work was doing for them, and again, it never changed. It stayed. Anytime I tried to change the identity or the look or something about it, it never worked. So I guess a lot of communication channels to people that were maybe not experiencing it at the beginning were open, and then a lot for myself, it was like after 3 years, it was like I reached a point where I was like, why am I doing this? What is the sustainability of this? And my best pal, Thomas, who works with me, is one of my dancers. He told me, because I don't have much relationship experience, he said, "Oh, how long have we been doing this?" I said, 3 years. And he said, "Oh, well, that's like in a relationship. Most people in relationships, when they hit 3 years, they say, do we break up or do we keep going?" and he said, "You're at that point with Christine where you have to decide if you want to break up or keep going." And I said, "Well, I'd like to keep going." So I had to understand why this was in existence and what was it doing to other people. And once I think I figured out that it was doing something good for people and offering people someplace to go to explore things, as I do with the work every time I do it, I decided to keep it and allow it to kind of become something greater than myself, and something that could hopefully, become a conduit for political change and all these things. A lot of it gravitates towards, I keep saying political change because we're dealing with that right now, and it's something that can really inspire without selecting a specific direction or candidate or party. It's more of an internal, inspiring kind of fire. So I don't know. I don't know where it comes from or where it's going, but I just listen to it and it's doing okay right now, and nobody's dead yet.
Could you talk about the staging of your show? Because you've talked a lot about the message. What I knew nothing about you at this time yesterday, and I volunteered and trying to figure out what this is all about.
You're like, I'll never volunteer.
Christine, and I'm like, what? And it just kind of like built up, and one of your dancers came on, and he was on his bicycle probably. And so I went to see the show, and it was incredible in so many ways. But not that you're selling yourself short, but there's a lot of people, I think, that have a message that they want to say that just it just doesn't come off well in terms of theater. What I thought was incredible about your abilities last night is the connection between this audience and the performers, especially yourself, and the pacing of the show. And halfway through it, I thought, God, the music is terrific. And like the way that you have the lyrics and the music and the pacing was really incredible. So you obviously have an incredible talent for delivering great theater. And when you went, I heard about don't stand too close because you're going to get blah, blah, blah. So I was kind of in the back a little bit, but what I really was interested in is when you went into the audience and you started walking around, because my sense from last night is here you are in this muddy field in a tent, and the rapture and the spirit of what was going on there was just incredible from a theatrical point of view. And I was just really noticing the fear that the audience has in some ways, the excitement, and the what's he gonna do this time. And I just thought that's a really interesting dynamic that I wanted you to talk about.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the thing is that we're all born with something, and I'm a theater fag, and my favorite thing in the world is to keep the boat afloat and to keep the room going and to find a way to cater to you all in a way that keep you afloat, and I'll die doing that. So it's base is theater, but
But you had costume changes and people it never lost its flow. It never, there was never, kind of, this like lack of energy. Something was always going on, and that's really talent.
Thank you. Give this man a drink. Well, the thing is, I don't know. What I like to do is I don't know what's going to happen. I have bases, like home base, first, second, third. Sorry to bring sports into it. Into home base. But between the bases, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
And I just trust. So that shit that came out of my mouth before the last song last night, that's not scripted.
Okay.
None of that shit between songs is scripted. I know that one of the bases is I want to talk about your buttholes and how we're all equal. I know I need to get to that. I don't know how I'm going to get to it. So there's this excitement it's coming from the stage and it's being shared with y'all because I don't know what's going to happen. But I know I have to get to these bases.
Right.
I know I'm working with very talented, beautiful people on stage who will catch anything and hold me up, or I will hold them up. Really beautiful performers. And then I know I'm in a room with people who have the courage to at least be there. Be it in the back or the front, you're gonna get me in your face.
Right.
You can't hide. And
But then when you go into the audience, all of a sudden you kind of break.
well, and a lot of performers do that now, you know.
Yeah.
Mickey Blanco fucking runs into the middle of the crowd. They form a circle around him. He does half his show
Right.
on the floor. Like it's.
But not a lot of performers that take a butt plug out of their ass and.
No, and not a lot of audiences would stick around to watch what happens.
Right.
And I think that's exciting for us, like breaking that wall, and that is why you feel these feelings, because the entertainer or the artist or the provocateur or whatever is saying, well, no, you're not safe because you're not safe out there anymore.
Right.
Like, I have a really hard time with the term safe spaces. I understand a safe space in which you can be who you want to be in a room. But I do not believe in a space that is safe. Because someone will walk in and can walk in with a gun and take you all down,
Right.
which happens. Someone in that room can just fucking have a heart attack. The stage can light on fire. I can go crazy and who knows what, eat my foot.
Right.
Like, this idea that there's a safe space really is another, it's this thing, it's this kind of need for a lot of people today to put a stamp on something and then to shut people down who don't have safe spaces. You were exhilarated, I like to think, last night because you realized you were unsafe. That I could come into that room, into that audience, up to your face, grab a hold of you, that you were told to stand in the back, and you did, and then there I was.
Right.
Like, that is unsafe. But you are actually safe because I won't hurt you, and that's what makes a safe space. Like we were saying earlier, you have a responsibility with what you deliver. You can't just willy-nilly it out to people. You have the responsibility to make that safe space, but I think it gets really dangerous when you advertise a safe space. I think it's better when people know internally that they are going to a safe space because of word of mouth, because people say, hey, you should go see this. You should experience this. And that person knows that you might get a butt plug thrown in your face. That person knows you might get spit on. You might see the inside of a vagina. God help us all. Like, you might see graphic images from these magazines. Is that unsafe?
Well, we get safe confused with comfort.
Yeah.
A safe space is not a comfortable space.
Yeah.
And comfort is where you learn. Discomfort is where you grow. And I think, trust. Trust is. I'm sorry, I'm quoting Dr. Phil. I had to be honest. He said some real shit. That trust is really about how much you trust yourself. Trust is up to you. It's your choice as to whether the space you're in can be trusted, because it's really about how well you know or how you're going to react to the space. So if I'm seeing Christine, I trust myself not to faint when Christine comes in. You know, I trust myself to hold the space and be brave enough and introspective enough. I want to see this. That I'd never seen Christine. I met you before the show. You were so sweet. But I didn't know what to expect, and you told me I'm gonna burn this motherfucker down. And so you choose to show up. I wanted to show up for you to burn that motherfucker down, and you did.
That's fun.
Thank you. It's because I knew I could trust myself in that space, and I'm not gonna freak out and go call 911.
Please do though.
Yeah. But I think that's what you have to, your audiences have to understand. They have to trust themselves, and they have to be brave, or don't get in the fucking boat. You can't swim, and you ain't got no life raft. Don't get in the boat.
And if they do get in the boat and they are drowning, someone's gonna pull them out of the water when they're drowning, because that is the safe space.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we did a shaboom at this show we do tonight 2 years ago here, and do not lie, in the middle of the show someone was rolled in a gurney out of the room, because they took too many drugs and freaked out, and the show was going on, it didn't stop, and we looked down and there's a son of a bitch getting rolled out on a damn gurney to an ambulance, and we kept going because we knew everyone would get taken care of, you know? That's a safe space. This festival is a safe space, because you can be who the fuck you want to be and do what you need to do.
Is there time to share another thing?
Yes, please share.
Okay.
And I also want to go out with y'all kind of telling us where we can see your next spot during Outside of This. But yeah, tell us more.
Sure. One thing that I guess I just wanted to have the opportunity to share with the people who are here thinking about how we create space and spaces that are no longer available to us even is just the way that porn theaters have closed across the U.S. Part of the Disneyfication of Times Square and reading Samuel Delaney's Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, and kind of trying to understand what is it about the communal experience of watching porn versus the consumption of it at home on your individual screen with whoever is you already know is with you or by yourself, and the difference that can come from having an interaction with a stranger, and the ways that cruising in gay sex community is not often available to people who are dykes or assigned female at birth, and just there's not as much space for that. So what does it look like to create that space? And after having read Carol Queen's Leather Daddy and the Femme and just being oh, this is so hot, but it doesn't always have to be accessed through our gay male leather community or dyke leather community. And so kind of thinking about all that and then wanting to have possibility for desire and contact, the intimacy that can come through contact with strangers. One of our screenings that we got to do last year that I feel most special to my heart was when we had a space that, I should have asked Karen, we could still do this here, is we had 3 seating areas, one for folks who, while they were watching the films, could bring your own sex toys if you wanted to masturbate and enjoy yourself, because you're watching porn, it is sexual, it's okay to get turned on. And then another section for folks who wanted to be able to cruise and find other people to touch and have consensual sexual interactions with. And then I guess the third section was for folks who just wanted to consume the porn without the distraction of getting cruised or something like that. And so, we led the audience in a little activity prior of how to ask for consent both verbally and non-verbally as a way to be inclusive of not everyone has the capacity to speak, and there's a lot of, we also want to be able to hear the films, and if you're just hey, can we have sex?
Watching.
And I think it was one of the most beautiful screenings. I didn't want to watch the films anymore. I was just like turning around being like, who is doing it? We had like there was like a handmade glory hole set up so people could go over there and also experience, and it had different sizes and different heights of holes so that all different parties could participate in this. So yeah, it's something that even though, there's some spaces that don't even want us to come and show the films at them, and so like this year in Philly, it's been particularly hard to find a venue. Boston is very uptight. It's, there's places where we want to take the films where there hasn't been a host site to have us that would kind of work with us. And so, because we want to do so much more than just show the porn, we also want to have live performances. So then there's like liquor license rules with do you need to have the areola nipple covered, or, what can we expose out there? So I wanted to just share that thoughts and space about what it takes to create intimacy, and also intimacy that's found through interactions with a stranger too.
I want to be mindful of time. We have 8 minutes left, so we could do a quick question and then have everybody tell us when we can come to see their work and where.
Alright, I just got one more question. But this is for everybody. So I was thinking about, especially as being a bad apple, like the controversy of all of the work that you're doing in some way or some form, and having to stand by that when you're challenged. So like, what's that look like for you, or like, what kind of things do you do to kind of reinforce yourself in those situations where you have to stand by the controversy of your work?
I was fortunate to have PJ, who had dealt with controversy with his work whenever I first experienced it. So PJ taught me really the ropes of the first steps of how to deal with it. And one was to shut the fuck up and to be quiet and to just listen to what was coming at you, to avoid all comments on any videos. Never look at comments on videos ever, and to engage when it was constructive. Those were the first kind of things I learned, and luckily I had him. I had like people like Silky Shoemaker, who I work with, who are very beautiful, active people in these realms, who kind of held my hand, because you're very vulnerable when you make work. You're giving yourself, you're opening yourself up, and when people, especially today, attack you, you really do have to decide, like, you're being attacked, you're wide open, you're being thrown everything at you, and so you're very protective with your work, it's your kid, but you also need to be aware that you might be really offending people, you might be doing these things that you are fucking totally unaware of doing because you're just rolling with this beast. So now I've been able to process a lot more of what I'm doing that could possibly be offensive to people and why. And in my own time, I can go into the circuit board of what I do now, and I can change some things. I can read about some things that I'm doing. I can talk to some people who can maybe educate me, not to change the source, but to really fashion it in a way where I can tweak it and educate myself and speak out about things that maybe I did cross a line on, or did appropriate, or did really, I don't know, offend in some way. I was never satisfied with being silent. It kept me safe in those very delicate first years, but now it's like you kind of have to address it. You have to have a conversation about it now. You have to be held accountable for certain things that maybe you didn't see at the beginning, or you just stand by it and say, this is what I do and I feel this way about it and I'm gonna stand by it. But silence really is kind of rough now in the world we live in, so I think just having good friends around you that you can get a lot of advice from, and then developing a really hard shell, and never looking at comments, and putting garage doors down on people who are coming to steal your platform, use you as their microphone in this very negative way, just dropping doors, and I always kind of picture doors just going down, going forward. So it's tricky, and it's a vulnerable place, but you do have to listen, and you do have to speak up, and you do have to change your ways sometimes, and understand that you probably did do something a little wrong. So, yeah.
My challenge is as a director is convincing the people who actually be the face of the piece to be brave and that's where the controversy, because I'm always sitting in the back of the theater in the dark or at home sometimes while the controversial work is actually being performed by actors or an actor. And I think that once, if the actors are convinced, and not always are they. I recently directed a show where they weren't convinced, and it was difficult to defend the work. But when the actors, when the creative team is behind the work, and then there's a team of people, and I think part of my intention is to offend and create controversy. So I just do a lot of smiling sometimes when when you're mad. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. That's kind of my go-to. But I think I have to think about the people who are the face of the work and who will bear the brunt. The confrontation will happen most viscerally after the show with them. And I think if they're okay, then we're an army.
This has been so great. Yeah, and I'm wondering if any of our curator organizers want to close us out with any announcements or Lauda?
No, just so you can see asking like when happens.
Yeah. So on Saturday at Outsider, 8 p.m. in the Vortex, and you can come and see the Hot Bits films. I'd also just like to acknowledge Arizal, Snacks, and Heart. If you could stand up, my co-curators who are here in the room with us. And if you have friends, family, soon-to-be lovers in other cities that you want to send, we will also be this spring touring the festival in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston, Seattle, Tennessee, and maybe more places if you would like to. Tucson now.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Saturday, 8 p.m.
Saturday, 8 p.m.
Okay. What about y'all?
Routine?
Manifesto, which I'll be performing in, directed by Edris, plays in the Vortex, the main stage, at 6 p.m. on Saturday. It's about an hour long, a little under an hour. So yeah.
In time to go to see the film.
Exactly. Susana, what about you?
This is it.
This is it. And Paul,
And then tonight I'm in a troupe called Shaboom,
which is amazing,
with Lex Vaughn and Silky Shoemaker, and we're doing tonight at 10 o'clock in the Vortex main space, and Saturday night at 10:30. So please come. And then for Christine, I'm in New York. There are 2 shows with Dynasty Handbag in March, and then we're planning a tour to small rural towns across the United States this year, starting in June, to deal with the election we're about to go through. It's called the Shitty City Tour. So we'll be taking Christine on the road, going to small towns across the country from June until December. Well, not the whole time. It's a seasonal tour, so she'll leave her cave for about 2 weeks every season and bring it back to the cave. So we will be hopefully coming to y'all's towns out there. If you live in the big cities, we're gonna make you leave the big city and go to a small town.
Yeah.
So we will Robin Hood some big cities. So yeah, so hopefully we'll see you out on the road this year somewhere.
Thank you, Paul, Susana, Edris, Rotimi, and Top Shelf. Thank you as also always to TJ and Kern for hosting. See you at the rest of the events.